My aunt manipulated my fiancé into leaving me for her daughter, using lies and guilt to secure a wedding that was more about status than love. They thought they won, but I stayed calm and set a quiet plan in motion, one that unraveled their lives from the inside out. When the truth exploded, it wasn't just personal. It became the scandal everyone in our community was talking about. I'm 28, and until last year I really thought I had everything figured out. I was engaged to Nate. He's 27, the man I was sure was the one. We met in college, but back then we were just acquaintances. He was witty and charming, but our social circles didn't overlap. After graduation, we reconnected at a friend's party, and something just clicked. We started dating, and over the next 4 years I thought we'd built a rock-solid relationship. He popped the question after a weekend getaway in the mountains, and I felt like I'd hit the jackpot. We celebrated with a small engagement get-together, close friends, and family only. I invited my aunt and my cousin Mia, though honestly, I did it out of obligation. My aunt and I have never been close. She's the type who tears others down to prop herself and Mia up. Mia's 4 years younger than me, and sure, she's very pretty, but let's just say intelligence isn't her strongest suit. My aunt has always treated Mia as her golden child, even once comparing Mia's 8th grade report card to my high school transcripts and declaring Mia the academic star. Apparently graduating with honors and going to college didn't count. Still, I didn't think twice about inviting them. Family's family, right? Nate charmed everyone at the party, including my aunt. She couldn't stop cooing over him. Oh my gosh, he's handsome and so successful. You really found a winner. At the time I laughed it off as her usual over-the-top praise, but in hindsight it wasn't just admiration. Fast forward a few months. Wedding planning was in full swing for October. I had to head to the UK for a summer program, but everything was lined up. We picked a venue, drafted a guest list, even put down deposits. Nate seemed supportive about my trip, though in retrospect I wonder if that was all an act. We kept in touch by calls and texts, but after the first couple of weeks his messages got shorter and calls became excuses, swamped at work, just exhausted. I chalked it up to distance. After all, our relationship wasn't new. We had years of trust behind us. About a month into my program, our conversations dwindled even more. I asked if he was okay. He brushed it off as stress. Then, a week before I was set to return, he stopped replying altogether. I called, texted, even emailed. Nothing. At first I worried something terrible had happened, but as days passed I realized something else was going on. I held on to hope that we'd sort it out when I got home. When I finally landed, I went straight to my apartment, expecting to see at least one missed message. Instead, my aunt was waiting on my doorstep. She handed me a printed wedding invitation, yes, an actual card, and said, "Nate is marrying Mia." My first reaction was laughter. I thought it was a sick joke, but her smug look told me it wasn't. "I'm so sorry, dear," she said without a shred of sympathy. When people fall out of love, it's nobody's fault. I stared at her, stunned. She calmly laid out the story. Nate, lonely while I was abroad, had turned to Mia. Over coffee, he'd professed his love to her and proposed. Each detail from my aunt felt like a punch to the gut. Then came the backhanded concern. "You can't blame Mia, sweetie," she said with dripping pity. "She's beautiful. Perhaps you shouldn't have done the UK program. Long distance is tough. At least he'll still be family, right?" Finally, she even had the nerve to suggest I find someone else. Maybe an older, divorced man looking for a second chance at love. I barely had the strength to ask her to leave. She patted my shoulder patronizingly and walked off. I collapsed on the couch and sobbed harder than I've ever cried. I felt humiliated, betrayed, shattered. The man I loved had cheated on me with my own cousin, and my aunt, who always looked down on me, reveled in it. In the days that followed, I existed in a blur, barely eating, sleeping, or focusing on anything but replaying it all in my mind. How did this happen? Nate offered no explanation, no closure, just silence. I thought we was building a future together, but it turned out he'd been planning one with someone else. Of all people, my cousin Mia. She's the same cousin my aunts always compared me to. For weeks, I couldn't even face my friends or my coworkers. I dreaded their pitying looks and endless questions. Everyone knew about our engagement. There'd been that huge party, tons of photos on social media, and sappy captions about how lucky we were. Now all I could think was how foolish I must have looked. When my mom found out, she flew in and stayed with me for a week. She's always been my anchor, and having her around helped more than I can say. She never forced me to talk, but she was there whenever I needed her. We spent hours binge-watching awful TV shows, eating ice cream straight from the carton, and making ridiculous jokes to try and laugh at the mess. She even cracked, "Well, at least you dodged a bullet. If he could do this to you, imagine the kind of husband he'd make." It helped, but the second she left, the loneliness slammed back in. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders. Our Saturday mornings at the coffee shop, the park where he popped the question, even our kitchen table where we dreamed up our life together. It felt suffocating, so I knew I had to get out of town. I applied for jobs overseas, something I'd always thought about before Nate came into my life, and a few weeks later I landed a great position in Leeds, UK. It wasn't just a job, It was a chance to start over. Packing up and saying goodbye to my mom was terrifying, but I boarded that plane full of equal parts fear and hope. At first, Leeds felt completely foreign. I didn't know a soul, and the first few weeks I felt out of place. But my coworkers were friendly, and the work kept me occupied. I stayed late, volunteered for extra projects, anything to keep my mind off what I'd left behind. Bit by bit, the ache in my chest started to ease. A few months later, I got a call from my mom that changed everything. At a family gathering, my aunt had been bragging about Nate and Mia's upcoming wedding, calling them a perfect match. Then someone asked what he did for a living. My mom, knowing Nate had quit to pursue writing, stayed silent, letting my aunt handle it. Confidently, my aunt told everyone he was still in finance. But it didn't take long for someone else to chime in. "Sho, isn't he writing now?" My aunt's face turned beet red as she stammered through an excuse about how writing is such a noble profession. The damage was done. I couldn't stop laughing when my mom retold it. For the first time in months, I felt like I had the upper hand. My aunt, always looking down on me, had unknowingly sold her daughter to a man with no steady income. Mia even had to take a part-time receptionist job to keep them afloat. Hearing that felt like balm for my bruised pride. Then my mom dropped the final bomb. Nate and I still had a joint trust fund from when we were engaged. I'd managed it, so I had full access. After everything I'd covered, his rent, groceries, and creative expenses, I figured it was only fair. I liquidated the account and moved the money into my savings. Sure, 20% legally belonged to Nate, but after all I'd invested, I felt justified. It was the first time in months I truly felt in control instead of the victim. I settled into my new life in Leeds, focused on work and myself. I hadn't thought much about Nate or home until Christmas. That's when the drama circled back. Nate showed up at my mom's, demanding to talk about the trust fund. He ranted about how I'd stolen his money, but my mom shut him down. If my daughter took what's hers, she has every right. Still, he wouldn't let it go, insisting it was our money and I was obliged to give him his share. A few days after Christmas, he emailed me directly. His tone was desperate, almost pathetic, claiming he was about to be evicted and needed the trust fund money to pay overdue rent. He even had the gall to call me petty for withholding it. "Don't you understand how hard things have been for me and Mia?" he wrote as. If I were ever expected to care about their problems after everything they'd done to me, I clearly missed that memo, so I ignored Nate's first email. But Nate being Nate, he didn't just give up. A few days later, he tried a different tactic. He sent another message full of apologies, admitting he'd made mistakes, saying he regretted how things ended between us, and hoping we could somehow move past it. Of course, the real motive was obvious. He wanted the money. He even dangled a bit of guilt by adding, "So I thought you'd be more understanding considering everything we shared." Understanding? After he humiliated me and wrecked our relationship? Not a chance. Still, I decided to reply, not because I owed him anything, but just to set the record straight. I told him flat out that the trust fund was gone, that he had no claim to it, and to consider that repayment for all the financial support I'd given him while he chased his dreams. Then I blocked him. Simple, right? You'd think that would be the end of it. But a few weeks later, my aunt and Mia showed up at my mom's house demanding to see me. Apparently, Nate had tattled about the trust fund, and now they were up in arms over my decision to liquidate it. My mom called me afterward, barely able to hold back laughter. My aunt was absolutely furious. She actually had the nerve to declare, "You ruined Nate's life." Mia was in tears, accusing me of sabotaging their future and claiming they were on the brink of homelessness. She begged my mom to convince me to hand over Nate's share. My mom, being the amazing woman she is, told them to leave and never come back. If Mia is so successful, she asked, then why can't she support her own husband? It was priceless. But the real surprise came when my dad, who usually steers clear of family drama, finally weighed in. He threatened to cut off his financial support to my aunt if she didn't stop harassing me, pointing out that if Mia and Nate were really struggling, maybe they should have thought twice before betraying me. Of course, my aunt played the victim, tears and all, claiming she only wanted to secure Mia's future and never suspected Nate would turn out to be a bum. She said she'd assumed he was still working in finance and was horrified to learn he'd quit over a year ago to pursue writing. Then she straight up blamed me for not telling her the truth about his finances. If I'd known, she sniffled, I would never have let Mia marry him. The irony was almost too good to be true. For years she'd belittled me, comparing me unfavorably to Mia and acting as though she and her daughter were better than everyone else. Now they were begging for help because Mia had married a man who couldn't even cover his own rent. And the best part? My grandparents, who'd been letting my aunt and Mia live rent-free for years, finally kicked them out, saying they were exhausted by all the drama. So now my aunt and Mia are crammed into a tiny apartment, struggling to pay bills, while Nate still hunts for steady work. And apparently, no one's exactly lining up to hire him. I won't lie. It felt good to hear about their struggles. Call it karma, call it justice. I say they deserve every bit of it after what they put me through. By the time my aunt, Mia, and Nate were turning on one another, I felt like I was finally regaining control of my life. I had no intention of stepping back into their chaos. But, as usual, they found a way to drag me back in. A couple of weeks after my grandparents gave them the boot, my mom called again. They'd shown up at her door with a sad story. The landlord had handed them an eviction notice after Nate skipped rent for the third month in a row. My aunt, desperate as ever, needed someone to blame, and, predictably, pointed her finger at me. She stormed in like she owned the place, ranting that I was the reason Nate and Mia couldn't pay their bills. If you hadn't stolen that money, she shouted, we'd be living comfortably right now. Can you believe it? Sadly, accountability isn't something she's ever mastered, so of course she refused to accept any responsibility for her role in this mess. After all, she'd been the one to practically throw Mia at Nate, convinced that marrying him would solve all her daughter's problems. Now that everything had blown up, she was scrambling to offload the blame onto anyone but herself. And Mia? She sounded just as delusional. According to my mom, she kept whining things like, in 10 years I thought Nate would be taking care of me, and Annie promised we'd have that big house by now. The idea that Nate, a man unemployed for over a year, could provide that life was so ridiculous I actually laughed out loud. Still, the situation had its highlights. My dad, who'd been mostly silent during this entire ordeal, finally spoke up when he overheard my aunt ranting at my mom. He came downstairs and told her off. If Mia and Nate are so successful, why are they begging for money? Instead of blaming my daughter, maybe ask yourself why you thought it was a good idea to marry Mia off to a man who can't even pay his own bills. And that, right there, was the perfect closing line to all the insanity. My aunt tried to deflect, insisting she had no idea about Nate's money troubles and accusing me of hiding the truth from her. If you'd told me, I never would have let this happen, she sobbed, as if her ignorance excused her. But my dad wasn't buying it. He reminded her she'd spent years treating me like a second-class citizen while putting Mia on a pedestal. Oh, you thought you were so clever, he said. You sold my daughter's fiancé and called it a victory. Now that the truth is out, you're begging us for help? Don't make me laugh. According to my mom, that's when everything unraveled. Mia, silent up to that point, broke down in tears. I'm terrified we'll end up homeless, she cried. Nate promised he'd take care of me, but he lied. I don't even think he loves me anymore. It turned out Nate had been blaming Mia for their financial problems, even though she worked part-time as a receptionist thanks to my uncle's favor, while he barely earned anything from his writing. Their entire relationship was built on lies, and reality came crashing in. The real kicker came when my aunt tried to blame Nate. I reminded Mia I'd warned her not to marry him, but my aunt conveniently forgot she'd spent months bragging about their engagement. I always knew he wasn't right for her, but Mia wouldn't listen. That was when my dad had enough. He told my aunt and Mia to pack their bags and never come back. You paraded Nate around like a trophy to humiliate my daughter, he said. Now you expect sympathy? Get out. When my mom relayed all this, I couldn't stop laughing. The image of my aunt and Mia being kicked out of my parents' house was so satisfying that, for a moment, it almost made up for everything they'd put me through. A few days later, I got an email from Nate. No money request this time, just an apology. He admitted marrying Mia was a huge mistake, claimed my aunt manipulated him, and wrote, I know I hurt you, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. He told me his life had fallen apart. His writing career was stalled, he was struggling to find work, and his marriage to Mia was on the rocks. I wish I could take it all back, he said. I wish I'd stayed with you. I didn't bother responding. Nate made his bed. Now he had to lie in it. Instead, I forwarded his email to my mom with the note. Karma finally caught up with him, and she replied, Best Christmas gift ever. 2 years later, my life couldn't be more different. Moving to Leeds was the best decision I've ever made. I've built a solid career, made amazing friends, and even started dating again. My boyfriend James is everything Nate wasn't: kind, respectful, and genuinely supportive of my goals. For the first time in years, I'm in a healthy, loving relationship and couldn't be happier. As for Nate, Mia, and my aunt, karma has been working overtime. Right after the eviction drama, my grandparents cut my aunt off financially. She'd been living off their generosity, letting them pay her bills and house her, until they saw how she manipulated Nate. They kicked her out, and she's been struggling ever since. Mia is stuck in a toxic marriage. Word in the family is their fights are constant. Nate blames her for their money troubles, and she's furious he lied about his income. Relatives say a divorce could be imminent. Nate finally gave up on his writing dream and took a low-paying customer service job just to get by. He's miserable and still blames me for stealing the trust fund money, even though I don't owe him a penny. A few months ago, he sent another short email asking if we could start fresh. Of course, I didn't respond. The most satisfying part is watching my aunt face reality. For years, she treated me like I was invisible, while boosting Mia as the golden child. She thought she'd won when Nate left me, but now she's cramped in a tiny apartment with no income or support. Mia, her precious golden child, is trapped in a crumbling marriage. A few weeks ago, my mom called with an update. My aunt has been begging family for a second chance, but my grandparents told her she's not welcome until she owns her actions and apologizes to me. Mia's been asking about divorce lawyers, finally realizing Nate wasn't the Prince Charming she thought he was. Hearing all this felt like validation. For so long, I was painted as the villain, the selfish woman who drove Nate into Mia's arms. Now the truth is out. My aunt, Mia, and Nate dug their own graves. Meanwhile, I'm thriving, with a great job, a loving boyfriend, and a life I'm proud of. Losing Nate was the best thing that ever happened to me. If he hadn't left, I might still be in that one-sided relationship, pouring energy into someone who didn't value me. Instead, I've built a life surrounded by people who truly care. Karma is real. It takes time, but people get what they deserve. While they're busy cleaning up their mess, I'm free to live my best life. To anyone reading this who's in the middle of something similar, it gets better. The pain won't last forever, and you'll come out stronger on the other side. Who knows what's next? I've learned to stop planning every detail and start trusting the process. Life has a funny way of working itself out, just not always the way you expect. If someone had told me 2 years ago that I'd be this happy, this free, I would have laughed in their face. Back then, I was still reeling from betrayal, piecing myself back together and wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. But here I am, not just surviving, but thriving. And it's not just about having a great boyfriend or a job I love. It's deeper than that. It's about finally seeing my worth and refusing to settle for anything less than I deserve. I used to think love meant sacrifice, that I had to constantly give and forgive to make a relationship work. But James taught me that real love doesn't feel like a struggle. It's patient, kind, and balanced. For once, I'm not walking on eggshells or doubting myself. I'm just happy, genuinely, deeply happy. Meanwhile, the chaos I left behind seems to keep spiraling. Every now and then, I hear updates from family members who still keep in touch with Mia or my aunt. Apparently, things have only gotten worse. My aunt tried to move in with another relative after my grandparents cut her off, but nobody wanted to take her in. Her years of manipulation and backhanded comments finally caught up with her, and now she's burning through the last of her savings just trying to stay afloat. Mia, on the other hand, is trapped in a situation of her own making. The last I heard, she was still with Nate, though barely. They live in a tiny rental outside of town, and most days they can't even look at each other without fighting. My mom told me Mia has been applying for jobs more seriously now, not just part-time gigs, but anything that might give her a way out. It's sad, really. She thought she was winning when she took Nate from me, but now she's stuck with someone who resents her and blames her for all his failures. And Nate? Well, what can I even say? He's the same Nate he always was, full of excuses, always the victim. He hops from one dead-end job to another, still trying to hold on to this idea that the world owes him something. I'm told he spends most of his time complaining online, venting to anyone who will listen about how unfair life is and how everyone's out to get him. He refuses to see that the reason he's miserable is because of his own choices. There was a moment, not long ago, when I saw his name pop up in my inbox again. Just seeing it made my stomach turn. I didn't open it. I didn't even read the subject line. I just deleted it. That felt powerful in a way I can't explain. For so long, his words had the power to shake me, to make me question everything. But now, they don't even register. He's just a ghost from a past life I've long outgrown. What's really ironic is that for years, my aunt acted like I was the outsider, the one who didn't belong. She made it her mission to make me feel small, like I was less than. But now, she's the one on the outside looking in. She tried to destroy me, and in doing so, ended up isolating herself from the very family she tried to control. I don't say this out of spite. I'm not gloating. I'm just finally seeing things clearly. All those years I spent doubting myself, wondering what I did wrong, it wasn't me. It was never me. I was just an easy target for people who didn't want to face their own shortcomings. And here's the beautiful thing about healing. It changes you. It softens the edges of your anger, but it also sharpens your boundaries. I don't hate Nate. I don't even hate my aunt or Mia. I just don't want them in my life. That chapter is closed. Done. Over. I've forgiven them, not for their sake, but for mine. because holding on to all that pain only weighed me down. Letting it go, that's where I found peace. These days, my world is quiet in the best possible way. I wake up and feel grateful for my independence, for the people who love me, for the life I'm creating. I spend weekends exploring new places with James or having long coffee dates with friends who feel like family. I'm building something real, something lasting. And I no longer feel like I'm chasing happiness. It's just here. So if you're going through something similar, if someone betrayed you, hurt you, made you feel like you weren't enough, I hope my story reminds you that there's light on the other side. You are not defined by what someone else did to you. You are not broken or unlovable. You're just in a chapter that won't last forever. Give it time. Give yourself grace. Walk away from what doesn't serve you. And trust, really trust, that better days are coming. Because they are. I didn't believe that once, but now I know it's true. Life has a way of working out exactly how it's supposed to. Sometimes it takes a little heartbreak to lead you exactly where you were meant to be. And now, looking around at everything I've built, I wouldn't change a thing. Not a single thing.